Hi, it's Pavel with another C# homework. This one is from chapter 13, exercise 5. We'll be doing an order of exception handlers. We will be evaluating it. We're supposed to write a quick app that demonstrates the importance of the order of exception handlers and write two programs. One with correct ordering of catch blocks. In other words, to place the base class exception handler after all derived class exception handlers, and another with the reversed order. And they want to know what happens when we try to compile that program. All right, so let's do a quick try catch blocks right in the main method. So we will simply do, we'll throw an exception. Doesn't really matter which one. Let's just do format exception, for example. So we throw in an exception. Now we have to catch it. So in our first catch block, we will be catching the actual exception. So we will catch the format exception and pass it to an object we'll call x. And over here in the catch block, we will simply display right line exception. Oh, actually, let's display format exception, and on new line, we can actually display the message that comes from the system with this particular exception. We can do another exception. This time we may try to catch an exception. We can try index out of range exception. Now this one won't be triggered yet, so this block, will not be executed. But that's the point to demonstrate what does get executed and what doesn't. Right. So I will do another right line. And this is index out of range. And on new line, we can do again the message itself from the system. And finally, remember they want us to put an base class exception handler at the end, which is simply catch exception. That's the base class from which all these exceptions, the format exception, index out of range exception, and any other exception it derives from. So again, we will simply display a message that says this one's just the exception, like that, and we will display the message. Okay, we can play with it a little more. For example, we can add finally block, and at the end we will simply display console.writeLine. This is a finally block, and as you know, this will be displayed. This will execute no matter how many exceptions are being caught or thrown. All right, so right now we are throwing only one exception, which is the format exception. So all that should be displayed is this format exception, and then on new line, the actual message from the system. So let's run this. And you couldn't see anything because I need to put console.readline at the end to pause the screen. Okay, so let's try again. And here is our format exception. Here, just as expected. And one of the identified items was in invalid format. So this is the message from the object format exception. And finally, this is finally block, which of course has to display. So now let's throw another exception. or a different exception. Let's throw, I don't know, the index out of range. So now when this exception is thrown, this one is skipped. It goes to another catch. This is the one that matches. So this is the block, or this is the message that will be displayed. So let's try that, and we get the index out of range. That's our message, and on the new line, it's the system message about the error. And again, we have the finally block being displayed. Now, if we throw a completely different exception, let's say insufficient memory exception. So it goes to the catch. This is not the exception. This one doesn't match the signature, so it goes to the default one. So let's test that. And we got the exception message, which is what we wrote, and the actual message from the system. And once again, we have the finally block. So as you can see, the order is important because we need to have them in order. Otherwise, it will go straight to the default. Again, we throw an exception of certain kind. If this doesn't match any of the catch, it goes to the default one, the base class of all exceptions, which is the class exception. However, if it catches it here, if the signature matches with any other catch block before, that's the one that is being performed, not the default one. Of course, finally, block is being executed no matter what. So they want us to test to do it in reverse order. In other words, to place the base class exception handler before the derived class. So let's place this one, which is the base class exception, as the first one, and try to execute it. And now we get an error already. When I try to run it, we get a build errors. And the build errors simply state the previous catch clause already catches all exceptions of this or of a super type. In other words, the Visual Studio is already is not going to compile this because the default or the superclass cannot be before the derived classes. Even if I move it in the middle between these two, we will still get an error over here. It still won't compile. This one is now correct because this one is derived class, so it's before the base class. But this one is a derived class as well, and it's after it, so we still are not able to compile. The only way we can compile this is to keep the exception, the base class exception last. Again, the finally block is not the catch block. That will execute no matter what. It has nothing to do with the order of the catch blocks. But we need the catch block order with derived classes first and then the base class last as a default. In other words, if we don't catch it here or here, we will catch it here. It's like a switch statement, and you have the case one, case two, and then you have a default, and this is basically kind of like the default. It catches all the other exceptions that the catch blocks before could not. All right, so now we can run that, and that should run, and it does. So there you have it, fairly simple, quick video, and I hope it helped you, and I will see you next time. Take care.